All right, so let's talk about unit conversions. When we're done with this lesson and after you do some exercises, you should be able to describe the fundamental principle behind unit conversion. So basically, how does it work and why does it work? But also, most importantly, you should be able to convert from any unit to any other unit given a conversion factor. Okay, so a little bit of context here. There are many important aspects to the energy field, many important things to know. But a couple of things that are sort of fundamentally important, very basic things that every anybody working in the energy field should know. You know, basic energy literacy, like with the difference between energy and power. What does it mean? When is it energy? When is it power? Where is it? Where does it come from? Where does it go? That sort of thing, stuff that we've talked about in other lessons. But you know, you should also be able to intelligently use and understand what different quantities mean. So what's the difference between a kilowatt hour and a CCF of natural gas, or a gallon of heating oil, or a BTU, or a million BTUs, whatever. So understanding, you know, kind of being able to wrap your mind around, so to speak, different energy units. But also, and that's the focus of this lesson, is to convert from one energy unit or any unit to any other unit. Okay, so this is really, really important, and you'll be doing a lot of this. So this is important for you, but this is something that applies to the field. And I'll give you one really, you know, it's sort of an exceptional and dramatic example, but this is a real story. So I'll give you a second to read the synopsis. You can press pause if you'd like. And so the short story here is that in 1999 there was a satellite that was launched with the intent of orbiting Mars and gathering data from Mars. Okay, and so the rocket launched. It was successful. The rocket made it all the way to Mars, and then once it started orbiting Mars, it failed. So I believe it crashed actually. Um, so needless to say, this was a big deal. This is a 100 million plus satellite, or $100 million plus project, and they never got any data from the thing. And so you would think, wow, you know, this is a really complicated project. They probably, you know, some, you know, high tech, you know, aerodynamic or, you know, rocket design or whatever, is what the problem was. Well, it turned out there were two teams of scientists, one from NASA, one from Lockheed Martin, and one team happened to be using English units, feet, miles, inches, and so forth, and the other one was using metric units, meters, kilometers, centimeters, millimeters, and so forth. Okay, so they were doing everything right, presumably. All they did wrong was they didn't convert their units to common units, and this caused it to crash and burn. So very dramatic example. You know, they called it a, you know, at least in this headline, a mishap is a bit of an understatement, but, you know, obviously we're not going to be launching any rockets. Sorry to disappoint you if that's the case, but you will see that, you know, units are really, really important. And when you're in this class, if you have the wrong unit or use the wrong unit conversion, you're going to get the answer wrong. Okay, so that's, you know, it's no good. But if you're out in the energy field and you're doing incorrect conversions, or you're using one unit and somebody else is using another unit, you can get things wrong, which means it could cost people money. You could give people wrong information. You know, there's all kinds of implications here. So it's really important that you understand how to convert between one unit and another and understand what these units mean. Okay. In order to do this, we use a method called, you know, different people call it different things: factor label method, dimensional analysis. There's a couple of names for it. So basically it's four very simple steps. You get a quantity, okay? So a quantity means it's a number with a unit attached to it. So you express that quantity as a fraction. You insert a conversion factor, you cancel your units, and you solve the math. Four easy steps that I'll show you here in a minute. But um, it's really important. This is a technique that not, you know, it's not like this is universal the way I do it, but I am going to recommend very, very strongly that you do it my way. Um, it is the most common way to do it, but there's some slight variations on this. And the reason I tell you this is if you start to take shortcuts early on, you'll probably get most of your answers correct because it's very straightforward. But then as you move forward and we have more complex unit conversions, you will make a mistake and you'll lose track of your units. It happens to every person that ever tries to take shortcuts early on. So please use this method. It's really important. So you probably don't realize that you actually already know how to do this, okay? You know how to use this factor label method, okay? So if I asked you to, how many inches are in 3 feet, I'm sure most of you could tell me that there's 36 inches, okay? Well, how does that work? Well, because you know that there's 3 feet, and you know that there's 12 inches in a foot, right? And so if you multiply the two, that's 36 inches, right? Just like if I asked you how many seconds are in 10 minutes, you might have to think about a second, but you're like, oh, okay, 10 minutes, 60 seconds. A minute, it's going to be 600 seconds, right? Well, how is it 600 seconds? Because you have 10 minutes, and you know that there's 60 seconds in each minute, okay? So that's your 600 seconds. Well, guess what? That is actually unit conversion, okay? So how does this actually work? So how does this, all work out with canceling the units and so forth? So here we go. We'll just do a little example here. So let's do how many inches in 3 feet. Okay, so how many inches are in 3 feet? So step number one, we express the quantity as a fraction. So what we're going to do here is 3 feet, okay, and we're going to put it over a fraction. Make it into a fraction, so we put it over 1, okay. Now, the next step, we want to insert our conversion factor. So a conversion factor is an equality. So our conversion factor here is that 1 foot equals 12 inches. Okay. So a conversion factor is any equality. So like 1 mile, you probably know, is 5,280 feet. 1 pound is 16 ounces, whatever. So as long as it's equal quantity, so these are equal quantities. It's if you took a ruler, it's 1 foot is equal the exact same thing as 12 inches. It's just a different way to express it. The same as a mile. It's just two ways to express the exact same thing, a pound to ounces. Okay, so this is really, really important. In order for it to be a valid conversion factor, the two quantities have to be exactly equal, okay? So our conversion factor in this case is 1 foot equals 12 inches. And so what we need to do is we need to insert that, and we have a choice. We need to express it as a fraction. So it's either going to be 1 foot over 12 inches, or 12 inches over 1 foot. Sorry about that. Okay, so which one are we going to use? We have to insert one of these. And notice, no matter what we do, the top has to equal the bottom. So we can do either way, and we can insert as many conversion factors as we want to, because, and this is why, if you have, let's think of it this way, if you divide 3 feet by 3 feet, what does that equal? Okay, so you should know from math that any unit over the same unit is going to cancel out. And then anything divided by itself, so 3 divided by 3 is 1. So effectively, 3 feet over 3 feet is 1, okay? So if that's the case, then the sort of extension of that is that 3 feet over 12 inches it really just equals 1, okay? Now, the units don't quite work out, but this is the principle behind unit conversion, is that if you have one quantity over another, if you multiply by that factor, okay, so this is a factor, this is a factor. If you multiply by that factor, really what you're doing is just multiplying by 1. And again, very basic mathematics, if you multiply anything by 1, of course, you end up with the same thing. So, if you multiply by a conversion factor, as long as it's valid, in other words, as long as the top of the numerator is equal to the denominator, you're effectively multiplying by 1. So this is the same thing, as multiplying times 1. This is really equal to 1. So it's basically multiplying 3 feet times 1 times 1 times 1, right? Okay. So that's the sort of basis of unit conversion. Okay, so the question remains, which of these factors do I use? And so what we're going to base this on is we want to convert this into inches. So in order to do that, what you need to do is, remember, you cross out like units, okay, if they're on the top and the bottom on the numerator and denominator. So what we need to do is we need to get feet on the bottom. So we can cross out feet. So let's just redo this real quick. So we'll 3 feet over 1, and then we're going to multiply it times 12 inches equals 1 foot. And really, really important is step 3 here. Cancel your units. So before you do anything, cancel your units to make sure that you set it up right. So in this case, feet cross out with feet, and I'm left with inches. And now I solve the math. So I multiply whatever's on the top, and then divide by everything on the bottom. So in this case, it's just 3 times 12, which is 36. 1 on the bottom, so I don't need to worry about it, and I'm left with inches, so it's 36 inches. Okay, and that, my friends, is the answer. So really quickly, what happens if I insert the incorrect conversion factor? So if I do 3 feet, okay, and let's say, I put in 1 foot equals 12 inches, okay? My conversion factor, that's okay. Now what happens? What do I cancel out here? Nothing. I have feet times feet over inches. So technically, you end up with a unit of feet times feet, which is feet squared per inch, which doesn't make any sense. We don't want to do that. So if you end up with a wacky unit like that, then you know that you haven't done the unit conversion correctly, okay? So I'm going to stop there for this video. That's the sort of fundamental, the basis behind unit conversion, and then in the next video I'm going to go over some specific examples of unit conversions.